Welcome to Story Chats at Inspy Romance. I'm Elizabeth Maddrey, and I'm here with my two co-hosts.
I'm Narelle Atkins.
I'm Valerie Comer, coming to you from a blank beige wall at a retreat center where it is snowing outside. And I did not bring my cat, sorry.
You didn't take your cat on the church retreat.
It did not.
Huh.
Is Cooney a travel cat? Could you take Cooney places, or is Cooney a home cat?
Not be. Not a travel cat.
Okay.
No. Just taking care of the dog. That's her job.
There you go. There you go. And we have Heather Gray joining us today. We were supposed to have Deb Kastner, but she is ill, sadly, so she will not be joining us. And we're going to talk about our new multi-author project, Easter in Gilead. So thank you, Heather, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So Easter in Gilead is a little project that the four of us plus Deb have been working on, for a year and a half-ish, a year. Valerie and I started talking about it probably 2 years ago, and we've had a fascinating coming and going of various authors, and the five of us are who ended up shaking out when all was said and done. Looks like Valerie's frozen. Fairly sad. She looks like she fell asleep. So her Wi-Fi at the retreat center is not amazing, but she should hopefully get back here before.
Yeah.
So, but series, it's set around a passion play. So the story of the death and the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus that the Gilead Bible College puts on every year. And that is a made up thing. Now she's completely disappeared. That's very sad. So anyway, that is what the basic theme is, Easter themed. And we're going to talk a little bit about it as we go. So we'll start off with Narelle.
Yes.
As a reader, what do you love about multi-author projects?
Well, I think there's a few things I love. One is that it's a great opportunity to discover new authors and authors that you wouldn't necessarily go looking for. I mean, there are so many books on Amazon. Like, how do you find a book on Amazon? And so a multi-author series is a great way to meet new authors who write what you like to write. And Valerie's back. Excellent. And the other thing I like,
Wi-Fi here at the retreat center.
That's okay. Valerie's gonna pop in and pop out like Cooney.
Now I'm
it's all good.
Oh, good.
Yes. And the other thing that I really like is the connected stories. So I love series that are really connected. I'm the reader that loves following an author when their characters move from one series to the next and all that kind of fun stuff. And in a multi-author series, you usually get those fun connections and characters that pop in and out of stories. And I really enjoy sort of getting absorbed in that sort of story world that sort of branches off in some really cool ways.
How do you reconcile that love for interconnectedness with the fact that you don't read in order?
Oh, because it doesn't matter. I mean, you know what's going to happen. A romance is always going to have a happily ever after. Okay. And it's the way my brain works. Like, I can jump in, and even with writing and outlining, I can jump around as well. So I'm quite happy to know that these people over here ended up together, and reading the blurb, they end up together, and then I'll go back and explore that. I don't have to do a series in order unless it has to be read in order. Right. If that makes sense.
And your definition of that is different than mine. Yes.
Yes.
Well, if it's a mystery, or if it's something that's very specific that you've got to find a clue in each book to get to the end, then I will read that series in order. Okay. Because otherwise you don't understand what's going on. But with contemporary Christian romance, usually you can jump around a bit if you want to.
Okay.
And that's true.
Right.
Yeah.
Fair. Fair. All right, Heather, what as a reader do you love about multi-author projects?
Well, like Narelle, I really enjoy series where you get to know the characters and you see the relationships between the characters develop and grow over time. One of the differences between reading a series that's written by one author and a series that's written by multiple authors is you get different perspectives in a multi-author set. You see the same characters in each book, at least cameos, but you get a different way of looking at them, and I enjoy that.
Valerie?
I like seeing other people's takes on the same setting. The characters that come in and out, that like all the tertiary people, right? Just the random people in town, and just seeing different people crop up, not just the main characters, but the background. I like seeing that. It becomes more three-dimensional, I think, the more people you have poking at it. I mean, sometimes there's holes, but whatever.
Whatever.
That's fine. If you read out of order, you don't notice holes.
No.
Just saying.
All right.
All right. That's a pro right there. Maybe we'll all start reading out of order now.
No.
No, I can't. I don't. It just makes my skin crawl just even saying it. I can't do it. I think going last, I got all of my answers taken. So yeah, all of that. I would agree. I do enjoy also, it sometimes can be a way to meet a new author, like with a box set. You know, you have authors who you know, and then they invite people who maybe you don't know. And so I like being able to meet new authors in a sort of friendly setting, if you will.
Yes.
So, and I think that can be fun too.
It's not quite like a cold call then.
Right, exactly. It's not, you're not staring at it on Amazon going, I don't know, it sounds good, but I've never read them. I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. What about as a writer? Narelle, do you look for opportunities to be in multi-author series? Do you only join them if you're sought out? You have mixed feelings about them, love them, whatever. Speak.
Well, I've organized one, so I can say I do love them. And I think I would do more multi-author series if I had time. But you need to be able to work to specific deadlines. And my life is not necessarily conductive at the moment to actually getting things done on time. So my reluctance to join a box set series would be pretty much time and deadlines. And can I actually fulfill a commitment and do this? And so that would probably be the main reason I would say no, would be I just can't fit it in as much as I would love to do it.
Cool.
Oh, sorry. I, much like Narelle, it's a time issue. I enjoy doing multi-author projects. I enjoy doing box sets, and I've enjoyed doing something like Eastern Gilead, where it's in that same space with different authors. I won't say I don't seek them out, because I have in the past. I've led some box sets. But they're different seasons of life. And at this stage of my life, I'm fairly busy. So I don't seek them out, but if one comes to me, then I take a minute and I'm like, okay, is this something God wants me to be involved in? And if it is, then I go in with both feet, and do the best I can.
Yeah. Valerie?
Well, considering this is the second one that Beth and I have jumped into together and coordinated together, I guess I don't avoid them. I don't generally seek them out. Other than that, I have turned down a couple of invitations, and it's mostly, like you said, time. Like,
oh. All right. Well, while she's frozen, I will answer. I, like you guys, I don't necessarily seek them out. I have, okay. Oh, no, are you back? We lost you.
Of course you lost me.
Yeah. You were talking about time.
Yeah. Well, time. Didn't that say anything?
No.
Yeah, it has to resonate with what I want to give to my readers as well. So it has to mesh in time, but also other ways. So
yeah,
that's a good point too, because that is more important to me now. It should have been important from the beginning, but it's more important to me now because I am really trying to be more strategic about making sure I can tie it in with other things that my readers have read or might go on to read, so that it can become like an entry point for something, just from a business perspective. That makes sense. Yeah. And then my other thing is it does depend on the mix of authors. Everybody has their own personality. And it's good to have, like, they live and die. I feel like multi-author projects can live and die on the personality mix. So I know my personality doesn't always mesh beautifully with some personalities, and I'm sure vice versa. You know, you do have to be self-aware to be in something like this, I think.
You need to be a team player, and
Yeah.
some people think they're team players, but they're actually not.
Yeah.
So that can also be tricky to navigate as well.
Yeah.
But you've got to be prepared to compromise, and if you're a very strong person on having a vision for a setting and can't compromise on details changing, then you're probably not a good author candidate to be in a connected series. So it's just, there's some common sense, I think, that goes with that as well.
Yep. All right. So specifically, what was it about Easter in Gilead that drew you to the series, Narelle?
I think for me, Easter is something we had the Easter episode, which I think inspired the whole thing in the first place. And that was when we were talking to Lee Tober McLean in that episode. And I really thought about how we don't have that many books that are focused on Easter. Everything's Christmas. Like Christmas is like the big Christian event on the calendar in not just contemporary Christian romance, and pretty much all of Christian fiction focuses more on Christmas, whereas Easter is just as important as Christmas. And so I was intrigued by the Passion Play. I don't really have a lot of history in terms of knowing about it. I remember when Mel Gibson did The Passion of the Christ. That's probably close to the Passion Play, but it isn't exactly it. But it's sort of that focus on how that's really the core of the Christian faith is what's going on in the Passion Play. Yeah. And to me, it's a great opportunity to actually to have a story that has those deeper spiritual themes that really tie into the setting as well, if that makes sense. So I just found the whole thing intriguing, and you invited me and I said yes, so here we are.
Excellent. Heather?
You talked about personalities and how not all box sets, not every person works well together. Their personalities don't always mesh. And so in this case, I'd love to say it was because Easter is a profound holiday for Christians, which it is. But what drew me to this one was that I trusted the team that was putting it together. I felt like this was a group of people I could work with and that would put out a quality product that my readers would, that I could endorse to my readers. You know, I could say, you want to read all of these books and stand behind that. So that's what drew me specifically to this one. But I, like Narelle said, I would say it's not just that Easter is as important as Christmas. It's that without Easter, Christmas doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah. Valerie?
Well, I mean, besides that it was partly my idea, I know Beth and I just bounced stuff back and forth. We were like, there should be more Easter stories. We should write some Easter stories. We should write some Easter stories together. I don't remember who said what when, but this has been brewing for literally 2 years.
Yeah.
And so it's, and yet the idea never came to me as I should write an Easter series. It came in my mind fully fleshed as a multi-author series. Never really thought about it as multiple books per author in this case, but just let's just do this.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Yay. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, how many times did it just crop up? Because yeah, I'd think about it and we'd talk about it, then we'd sort of let it die off, and then you'd bring it up again, and then we'd sort of let it die off. And just the fact that it kept coming up, and we're like, you know, maybe this really is something we need to do. But I agree. It never was like, oh, I'll write an Easter series. That didn't. Although I have books like my Hope Ranch series. I think almost every single book in that series has a fairly large Easter scene.
Yes.
It's not an Easter series. But you know, yeah, it always was a multi-author concept. Since the beginning.
Definitely was.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So does your writing process differ when you're working as part of a multi-author series? How, why not? And is it harder or easier, Narelle?
Well, it depends on where you are in the order and what you're doing. So if I talk about Trinity Lakes, which is the multi-author series that's releasing now, I led that out with the first book, and every single minor character, side character had to matter in that book. I couldn't just have a throwaway character that was never going to reappear. If I named someone or talked about it, it had to matter. And the setting then had to gel with the story worlds of everybody else. And so it became almost a group project. I did this 10,000 word outline for everyone first. And people who don't outline were completely freaked out. And I pretty much stuck to it. Like the bones of the story, all the turning points, everything was pretty much the same. I just had to add details. And then my first drafts were communally looked at as well to make sure that they made sense. And my first draft was very setting heavy as well. So it was very much focused on the setting. And then it was later drafts where the story and the characters got deepened. So that's very different to what I would normally do for just something I was writing for myself. Whereas with the Easter one we're doing here is I'm tying up the loose ends in this one. So looking at what you guys have already written, because I'm running late, but that won't surprise anyone who knows me. But the advantage of running late is actually I can tie up stuff that needs to be tied up and bring the series home at the end as well. And so I really enjoy the challenge of actually getting different characters, different plot threads, different things that are happening and actually weaving and working that into a story. So I find it challenging and fun. It is harder, but sometimes the things that are hard are the best things.
Heather?
So much harder. So here's the thing. I write slower than every other author in this set. So I had to start my story sooner. So by the time the next author started writing their story, I was already half done. And so like I had to finish and then go back and layer in the characters and events from other people's stories. And that for me, that's harder to do. That's not the way that I think and the way that I write. And so that made it much more of a challenge, but I think the end product is rewarding. I think the end product is worth it. Like Narelle said, those things that are worth doing, sometimes they're just harder. So yeah, for me, it was a more difficult process, but worth it.
Valerie?
Both harder and easier.
Yeah.
The harder part is that my own vision of how something might play out might not work and didn't work. And so then I have to rewrite, do some bending for somebody else, where when I write a story that's between me and my readers, then I just write it how I want to write it. And it's how it is, folks. It's how it is. But it was also easier in some ways because as I got a chance to see what you guys were doing, I could go, I could put that event in my story. That would fit right about, that would make a good turning point for this, or that kind of thing. And it inspired some scenes that wouldn't have maybe had any meat any other way. So harder and easier. Different. Let's just say different, not the same call.
Yep.
But fun. I wouldn't want to do it every time though.
No. Yeah, I would say harder. Harder.
Am I the only one going with easier at all?
Yeah, harder. Because I know for me, I found with this, and then with Arcadia Valley, the previous multi-author series that Valerie and I were part of, that was Valerie's baby. That was her idea. So coordinating with other people can be a joy. It can also be not a joy. And so
very diplomatic.
Yes, sometimes, you ask a question and it sort of just flies out there into the void and you're like, tapping your feet thinking I would like to write, but I really need the answer to this. And I know for me, like there are authors who are like, they can put in, XXX, insert blah, blah, blah here, XXX, and then keep going. I don't write that way. I start on page 1 and I write to page the end and then I'm done. That's how I write. I do not write a scene here and a scene there and this would bridge them together nicely and I'll go back and layer this stuff in later, and I can't do that. I don't do that. Most like I don't people talk about all these multiple drafts of things and I write one. I write one draft and then it gets beta read and then I send it to my editor. That's what it is. So it is a challenge for me to not have instantaneous access to the information that I need, which when other people's schedules have to be taken into consideration, you don't. So, so it's
like
just,
you can hit Google up for the answer to
right.
that.
I can't just Google it right then and now. I have to wait for someone to tell me. And that is very hard for my impatient little soul. So
And if you're like me, you didn't know that you needed this question answered yesterday.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need it answered now because now is when you know that there's a question.
Right. Right. And if you don't get the answer in the next 5 minutes, then your kids are going to like explode and your writing time is going to be over. and who knows when you'll get back to it at that point. So it's definitely challenging for me. Rewarding. I will agree with people that it is rewarding, but hard.
I think a hard thing is if you're writing a series and an author leaves the group with characters that you'd factored in, and even though I do a lot of outlining in my head, I have had that experience where I've lost a section of characters, and that messes my process. Like I can lose 3 to 6 months on that. Purely because it was all worked out how this was going to happen, and just that one piece of the jigsaw being pulled out can be quite it can writer's block you as well. Well, it gave me writer's block. I had writer's block on a particular book for that very reason, because I lost minor characters that I've already factored in, and how do I unpick these from this world, because it's all in my head and they're not meant to be in my head, and it doesn't make sense. I can't keep them, and so that can be quite angsty as an author trying to manage some of those logistics as well, which is why I'm trying to be very careful, and if I'm going to commit to something, I need to do it. Even if I'm going to run late, it has to be released. It has to be done. I don't want to back out, because I know how hard it can be on the other authors if you do back out and they've already started writing with your characters, with their characters in your book.
Yep. All right. So what was the best thing about writing your book that you set in Gilead? And then on the flip side, what did you struggle with the most? Narelle?
My best thing is I've always wanted to write a cowboy hero. And so my book has a cowboy hero who's also a farm mechanic. But so that was the best thing for me, was actually writing a Western, because it's something I'd always wanted to do. And I thought, right, we're in Kansas, I can do that. And I've never been to Kansas, so it's completely new to me, the whole setting, the whole place. So as a Aussie traveling there, my heroine's Australian. I sort of have enjoyed the journey of being with my heroine and exploring this new place with her. So that's been really fun. And the struggle is how close to the deadlines I am in terms of running late. And that is the challenge. And life happens and people die, and you've got other priorities with family, and sometimes you just can't. There are some times when you can't write because you've got to look after other things in your life that are more important than what you're doing. And so that's probably the hardest part, is having all these unexpected obstacles crop up that then domino affect everything else down the line. So something that happened in 2022 is affecting where I am in 2023, because I should be further ahead, but I'm not because of other stuff. So that's the hardest part for me, is running late.
Fair. Heather?
I like my favorite part of working on this story was just getting to know the community of Gilead and getting to know the little characters that are those secondary and tertiary characters that just show up here and there and add so much flavor to the story. And I loved developing those characters and getting to know them and seeing what the other authors were doing with some of those same characters, and getting to bring some of their secondary characters into my story. That was just so much fun for me. The hardest part, I think, two things, like Val mentioned earlier, there's this, sometimes you have a vision for the way something's going to go, but then when you're collaborating with other people, their visions are different, and so you have to find a way to make everything work so that everybody's vision is at least overlaps enough to work. And the other challenge for me was writing to a calendar. I don't write to a calendar. I write stories that start in a season and go, and I don't really pin it down on a calendar. But for this, we had to, because we were all working off of the same thing, and we had a play that was happening. It had the same opening night, the same closing night. rehearsals were on this, or auditions were on this week. And so writing the story to the calendar was really hard because I don't plot, I don't outline. Normally it's this idea in my head, and so I tried making a little spreadsheet with the calendar of what was going to happen. And as I tried to do that, basically I had my characters at happily ever after within 2 weeks. And I was like, oh, this isn't going to work. I need to stretch this out over months. And so that was a huge challenge for me, comical at times, but yeah.
That's interesting.
Valerie?
I love the chance of doing a really Easter themed story with like redemption being a very strong theme in it. That to me was the big thing as we sat at the very beginning, and I'm like, okay, what are the themes? What is Easter all about? How can that be part of this character's journey? And to me, that was just really one of the highlights for me, was planning something that just nailed Easter. I hope it nailed Easter, why Jesus came, and just really drilling into that. To me, that was a lot of fun and very rewarding. And then the hard part, like Heather said too, was just the writing at different speeds, and that there wasn't always, or often, as Beth said, somebody to bounce things off of exactly when you needed it. You had to, sit back, wait for a day or two, sometimes even longer, for a reply that would work, and then rejigging things for that. So it did go a little bit slower than my usual writing speed because of that. But it actually, like when I look back at, like just the year chunked off, it wasn't really that much more. It felt like it on certain days.
Cool. I think for me, I enjoyed the best part is being able to work other people's characters into my story where I could. And that then also flies into the worst thing, which I've already talked about, is waiting for responses from people, because I was, I don't feel like I was able necessarily to incorporate other people's characters in as much as I would have liked to. I got Heather's in, I got some of Valerie's in, and that's kind of it. I tried to throw a couple mentions of Dennis and Narelle's in there, but I just, where we were at the time, it wasn't, I did what I could, and so.
And your characters and mine didn't overlap a whole lot, just in what they were doing. So yours were probably the least mentioned in mine, which is unusual for the way you and I work.
Yeah.
But it's how it was.
It's how it worked out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and we have a scene that's shared, but we have character, like your heroine and my heroine are not going to be talking to each other.
No.
Because I mean, Beck or Becky, she calls herself, she's a student at the college, and you've got Wendy who's working there. So they're not going to naturally cross paths. But we do have a scene in the college cafeteria. So there is some crossover.
Yay.
Yeah. Oh, yes. There's some crossover.
Yeah.
But we'll just, if your characters aren't besties, it's really hard to force those interactions that would just not naturally happen.
Yeah. Unless they're co-actors in a scene or something like
that.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And then also, like, I had this grand plan of how to work in some other characters, and I was really excited about it. And then that author ended up dropping out. And so I was like, wah, wah, that was kind of sad. But I mean, it is what it is. And I still really love my story. I think it turned out well. But there are challenges with the multi-author thing.
And that's the advantage for me going last, is that I was able to clean that up.
Yeah.
So there won't be the loose ends that could have been left with having an author who sadly had to drop out, can again get tidied up with the last story, which is mine, that we'll release. So it all will be tied up with nice bows. It's all good.
Exactly. All right. So we will take just a couple, like, real fast, because we're running a little long. Surprise. Not surprised.
That's never happened before.
Nobody's surprised. But we can talk briefly about our books. Tell us, not like the back cover copy, but close to the close to the back cover copy. The back cover copy in your own words. Narelle, do you want to go first, since you don't have a back cover copy?
I will have back by the time this episode airs. Well, it's all right. So I'll be very honest. We're recording this episode in advance, and my book is not on pre-order, and my book is not finished, but it will be finished, and it will be on pre-order when this episode airs, and it will be releasing. So it's all good. So my hero is from Gilead, Sam. He's a farm mechanic. He's actually comes across Valerie's hero in the story. They come across each other from work. So there's a connection there. He's also been in the Passion Play doing the set moving and all the set changing, all that kind of stuff as well. My heroine, her name is Beck. She's from a previous series in my Sydney Sweetheart series. Her brother is Zach, and she's basically running away from a big mess in Australia to the middle of nowhere, which is Kansas and Gilead. And she's made some poor decisions, and she really wants to spend a year studying the Bible, and she's got a history major from her degree, and really walk closer with Jesus. And so part of being a student there is to actually volunteer for the Passion Play, and she gets paired up with Sam doing set moving and all that kind of thing, because the last thing she wants to do is be on stage and be seen by anybody. So she was never going to volunteer to actually do that. And so Sam at the beginning of the story, he's 25, and he's just found out that from his grandfather's will that he's a joint owner of the family ranch where he lived for a few years after his father had a work accident. And so he's really torn about, well, am I going to stay in Gilead? Am I going to move to the ranch? Can I do farm mechanic work at the ranch? So he's in that transition phase. And as I said, Becky's only meant to be there for a short period of time, so you've got the distancing that happens as well. But there's a blind date, and there's a fake relationship, and there's a few other fun things that will pop up in the story.
My characters are Dawson and Letty. Dawson is a January hire at the college. He runs the audiovisual department, so he's brand new in town when my story starts, when the semester for the school starts. Letty runs the coffee shop in town, and she also provides refreshments during auditions and rehearsals, and will run the concession stand during the actual Passion Play. So they kind of run into each other in working on the play. But it is a second chance romance for them, so they don't quite realize that at first. So there's a little backstory there. Both of my characters are running away from their past. Like Dawson has had he lost someone that he loved close to Easter, and that just completely changed the way he thinks about Easter. And when he finds out that part of his job is running sound for this Easter play, he's like, what? Nobody told me that. And they're like, but it's right there, it's in the contract. And so that was just a divine appointment where God got him into that role, because that's where he needed to be. And Letty she has things in her past. She ran away from home when she was 16, 17, and landed in Gilead, and was taken in by someone local there and cared for. And she's grown up, and she came to Christ in Gilead, and she's just this wonderful person who still has this little black hole in her past that is she hasn't been able to move past. And so some things happen, and they both get a little bit of resolution in that renewal and rebirth that we think of when we think of Easter. So,
Valerie.
So my story is called Her Unlikely Hero, and the unlikely hero is Connor Hamlin, who's kind of skirted around some of my previous books as a kind of a tertiary character, really. He's been mentioned a few times, and so my readers will know him. He's been kind of a bad boy, which made him an ideal candidate for my redemption hopes here. He's in Gilead because he's been drifting since he dropped out of high school, and he's landed up here working on a farm that he kind of likes the job, and he's got the opportunity to stick around, so why not? And then he's got some things in his background. Again, people who've read some other stuff will know that he is the father of one of my other characters' sons. So he's the bad guy from back then. And then the girl that he meets here, who's in the wardrobe department at the Passion Play, has a very similar setup in her life as to Connor's previous girlfriend. So he's leery a bit about that as well. But the most fun thing really was throwing an unbeliever into the role of playing Jesus in the Passion Play. Like it was a lot of fun doing that, and just seeing his grappling with, I mean, is this even real, right? And then what Jesus came to mean to him. So that was a lot of fun there. Okay. And if I had Deb's blurb here, I would be happy to read it, but I don't have it on hand. So I'm sorry about that, because we were really hoping she'd be here today. I'm really sorry that she's fighting with a norovirus.
Yep. So mine is Wendy Hall, who is the sister of Whitney Hall, who you met in The Billionaire's Nanny. And so Whitney had sort of escaped Gilead because she hated small town Kansas, but Wendy has sort of stuck there, mostly feeling that someone has to stick around and be the good daughter and be with their parents and, you know, that kind of thing. She just sort of does what's expected. So she was married in The Billionaire's Nanny, and she had 2 daughters, and there was a car accident, and now she is widowed and bereft of her children. So, but she just sort of buries the grief and buries everything, really. And for reasons, she has reasons, secrets that she doesn't really feel like she can even say aloud to herself when no one's around. And Preston is from Chicago, and he is from a wealthy family and his great-grandmother met his great-grandfather at Gilead Bible College. So she sends Preston to the town because she wants to set up an endowment of sorts or a scholarship fund, something, give money to the college because she has fond memories and she wants to make sure that it continues to equip people to love Jesus. And he sort of feels like he should be able to do this over the phone. But great grandma's insistent that he goes down. And so because Wendy runs the fundraising section of the college, he interacts quite a bit with Wendy. And it really is more about, from the Easter theme standpoint, renewal for Wendy than it is for Preston. Although he has some growth, but not as much as Wendy does. So yeah, mine is her billionaire benefactor. Valerie's is her unlikely hero. Heather's is his runaway crush. And I've completely forgotten what yours is called.
Mine is her cowboy blind date.
That's right. Okay. And Deb's
is called his second chance cowgirl.
Okay. So, and Valerie's, mine, and Heather's are already out by the time this will air. So ours are there. Go forth and read. And Deb's
read
and
over
Val's,
and over again.
Yes. Deb's and Val's, Deb's and Narelle, sorry, should be out hopefully soon. So just keep an eye. There is a series page on Amazon. Yay, Valerie, for getting that squared away. So they're conveniently located right next to each other.
Yes.
In order
even. So
and I'll have the links for the other ones in the back of mine, back to my page that I'll update when Narelle and Deb's links are live. So be easy to follow through. Hopefully, Beth and Heather are doing this also. I haven't checked to make it easy for people to follow through.
Yeah. I have a book page on my website. Yeah. So I've already got, or at the time of recording, it's just a pink cover with the title and coming soon. But I will be doing the cover reveal, and that will all be happening. So it's all good.
Good.
All right. Final thoughts on Eastern Gilead? Anyone? No?
I'm so
Okay.
glad we did
And
it,
all our
is my
thoughts.
final thought. And I've really enjoyed it, and I'm glad we did it.
Me
Definitely.
too.
All right. So if you have read any of our Eastern Gilead books, we would love to hear from you. Or if you have thoughts on Easter themed books or, anything that you would like to chat about, sadness over the lack of Cooney in these episodes, any of those things. Leave us a comment on our YouTube channel or on our Facebook page. And while you are over on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. And we will see you again next week. In the meantime, don't forget to fall in love with a good book. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, folks.